everybody, welcome to Lisa's Art Room. Tonight I am going to show you how to stencil on canvas. This is just a small canvas board that I bought. It's a stretched canvas, and this one happens to be, let's see, 12 by 9, so 9 by 12. We're going to just stencil on that, but I'm going to first give it a little coat of paint. We're just going to do something simple, some brown, make it look a little bit like wood maybe. Not sure where I'm going with it, but we'll figure it out as we go. So I'm just going to throw some paint on here. I'm just going to do some, this is Folk Art Multi-Surface Satin in Vintage White. And this is the same paint in Real Brown. And I am just going to throw some of that on here with a chip brush. Real simple, nothing crazy. I'm just going to mix it around and make this kind of a light brown color just to give us a background. Just keeping it simple tonight. I might add some lines through it, make it look like wood. I haven't decided. When you do your background, you might want to paint your edges just so the whole thing is covered. And just leave it kind of rough like that, and then just lift it up and get your edges too. Alright, that's good. Lay it back down. Just give it a little smooth out, make sure I got everything covered. Don't worry about the streaks, just leave them. Just kind of make them go in one direction so that it looks more like a wood grain. And we're going to dry that. If you hit it with a cold blast at the end, it helps take away some of that tack. So I'm just going to get me some paint here and just a little brush, just a little round. Let's see, it's a number 6 round. We'll just use that. I'm going to go ahead and draw some lines on here just to be a little bit different. I'm just going to take a little bit of this Real Brown and just the tiniest touch of black. Just a little bit out of that. And I'm just going to mix that. So I have a nice dark brown. And all I'm going to do is just draw some lines across here. You can make them somewhat straight. You can use a ruler if you want. I'm not looking for perfection in this particular piece. I just want it to look a little bit rustic. So just add a few lines across here. And you can make them just a little bit thin. And we're going to blend them in just a little bit. So just make your darks a little darker, or your centers, I mean, a little bit darker. Push that out. I'm just going to take that same brush that's still wet from earlier, and I'm just going to use that to blend the edges. Still has that paint on there. I went ahead and did my sides, so I'm going to do those too. And I'm just going to blend this in just slightly. Do this as much or as little as you want. I don't want it to be real obvious so it doesn't take away from what I'm putting on top of it. I'm kind of letting it fade out just a little bit. little bit of white, not much. Throw that on my brush. I'm just letting those colors just kind of mingle. And I'm just going to dry brush this just a little. Give it just a little more texture. That. That's pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and wash out that chip brush. And keep yourself a microfiber so you can squeeze out the water so it doesn't just drip everywhere. Alright, we need to make sure that's dry before we continue on. I have to take the dryer to it again. Okay, that's dry. Now, if you want, you can add a little more detail on your wood. You could add just a real light wash of this paint onto your brush. I'm just going to spin it a little bit and just add a few like wood grain tones, kind of like when wood has a grain, it will just kind of have like little stripes. So we're just going to do that a little bit. So we might as well make it kind of look like faux wood. And try not to make them all the same because that will make it look fakey. I don't want it to look fakey, so it's obvious that it's a faux finish. It's not like we're trying to make it look super real or nothing, but you don't want it to look super fakey either. Just keep this nice and thin. So we just kind of want a subtle hint of it. And I'm just starting off with the center and then I'm just going around it and I'm continuing like a pattern all the way down. Okay, and then I just draw little stripes where to fill in. That's pretty much all there is to doing that kind of faux finish. You could add a knot here and there if you want. Just do it a little bit darker maybe, not too much, just a couple little knots here and there. Finish this one. And that's a very simple kind of faux finish. If your knot doesn't look right, just wipe it off. It's not really going to work unless I make it really dark, and I don't think I want it really dark because it's just going to distract too much, so I think I'll leave off the knots. I'm just taking a wet brush and just kind of wiping that back out. We're just going to keep it simple. That's a better choice. Alright, so then we've got our background for our stencil. So what I wanted to show you is how to stencil on canvas, because stenciling on canvas is a little different than stenciling on wood. Okay, because when you're stenciling on wood, you have a nice hard surface and you can pounce your wedge or your stencil brush and it doesn't give, okay? But when you're stenciling on canvas, you have to fight this give, okay? Because the stencil, the canvas gives in a lot and it can make stenciling quite a challenge. So what you do is you get yourself a piece of wood. It is about the same size as your canvas. Now you could use a book if you had a thin book that would just fit in there. That would be fine too, but I have lots of wood laying around, so I just grabbed a piece of wood. Now it's not exactly the right size, but that's okay because I can move it. I can just move it like this, and what that does is it pulls it up to the top, okay? So I just move it around as I need to, and then I have a nice firm surface. So we are going to stencil a couple of designs on this. I'll be using Essential Stencil stencils today, and I have a couple of packages here. I have this one. This is the Farm Fresh mini tags, and this is a new collection they came out with recently. And it has this Farm Sweet Farm. And which one is that? No, not that one. So this one has farm fresh eggs, milk, and bacon. That's the 3 in that one. And this other set, already opened them. So the other set is called the Farm Sweet Farm Tags. And that one has the Farm Sweet Farm, the Hey Y'all, and the farm with arrows through it. Okay? So those are the ones we have. I'm just going to use these, and I'm going to use this barn, so I'm only going to use part of that one. I'll show you what we're going to do. I'm also going to be using this Christmas set because I wanted it to say Farm Fresh, but the Farm Fresh in this set here is a little small. This Farm Sweet Farm, and then this one has like Farm Fresh. They're both a little small for what I wanted to do. Even if I mix this farm and this fresh, it's still smaller than this one. So I decided to go with this stencil that I also had on hand, and it is the, let's see, the Farmhouse Christmas Set. It was the Christmas collection from last year. I'm not sure if it's still in stock, but it might be, or you may already have it if you happen to have Essential Stencil stencils. If not, you could use the one from this and just use this farm and this fresh, and you could possibly put it over the top or side by side. That's an option, but this is what I'm going to do, as this video is mostly just for showing you how to stencil on canvas, so it's not a huge deal. So I'm just going to kind of lay out what I want so I can get a feel for where I want things to be. I'm going to do milk, eggs, and bacon. And then I'm going to have this here. And then actually I think I will put this one as well. So I'm using a lot of stencils. I like this On the Farm. And this one is from the Vintage Christmas Truck Set. So lots of stencils. I like to mix and match them a lot when I'm playing with them. It's just, you can be so creative and just make so many different things. So I'm going to use that too. So I'm going to put that down here. So I'm just kind of laying everything out and getting a feel for how I want it, how far I want it from the top and bottom. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is put these 3 because they're going to be in the center, but I'm not putting all of these words, only from here down. So we're just going to center these up where we want them, and basically I pretty much just want this part centered. So just kind of, you can measure if you want, be exact. I don't usually, but just trying to find my ruler. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we've got what, 9 inches here, so 4.5 would be half. So the pig is at about half. So that's about right there. So I was pretty close. And then I'm just going to center those across the board, about the same distance, and then the chicken in the middle there. Okay, now I'm just going to tape off the area that I don't want to use. Now in this case, because I'm going to do all 3 of these, I'm just going to use one piece of tape, but because I just painted this and it hasn't cured, I'm going to defuzz my tape by putting it on my clothes a couple of times because I don't want it to pull my paint off. Now if I had let this dry overnight, this wouldn't be an issue, but because I did just paint it, it's safer to defuzz it a little bit so it's not, if I can get the hair off of it now, because I have a cat, so of course now there's hair all over my tape. But I'm going to cover up all of everything except the bottom portion. I'm just trying to get it about the right height. Moved on me just slightly. Bacon one's a little bit high now. And you can kind of play with it. It's a little easier honestly if you do the tape separately, but I was being lazy. Maybe I shouldn't. Now I gotta fight with it. Alright, I'll do it separately. Sometimes we figure out things and they just don't work right. So, yeah, it's a little tacky because it is still not cured. But I don't want to wait, and just for the sake of getting this project finished, we'll just deal with it. Alright, that's a little easier. So just cover up the fresh so that we don't stencil that. And I'm not pushing super hard, I mostly just don't want to go over that. If you're a little close to your edge here, it's probably a good idea to tape that, because what will happen is you'll basically forget that you're that close, and then you'll go through and mess up your stencil, so mess up your project, so don't do that. Show you how to do this. So I'm just going to take an X-Acto. I don't need that whole piece, so I'll just cut right down the middle of it. This is a self-healing mat, so don't do that on your table. It will ruin your table. I'm just going to stick that there. And this one right here. I'm just taping off all the edges where I think I might be too close so that I don't go over. Now I'm going to keep this simple, and I'm just going to use black, I think, on this. I think I'll use dark brown. It won't be quite so dark. I think it will work better with this background color. You could even do vintage white if you wanted to keep it subtle, but I think I will go with the darker brown. This is really close to, it's a lot of very close stuff there, so you're just going to have to be careful. Now you can decide whether you want to use a stencil brush or a makeup wedge. I do both. I tend to like makeup wedges. It's just my personality and what I like, but both will work on this project. And the only thing I do is if I use a brush, a lot of times I find them too flimsy. Even the good ones, I love these brushes from Essential Stencil, but they just need to be a little bit firmer. So I will just take some tape about 1/4 of an inch up and just tape that, and that firms them up a little bit so that it works better. So I will show you how that works. Go ahead and get my plate back out here. Just use the same one. Switch sides. Now, if you're squirting your paint onto your plate and you have your project painted, just move it aside, because sometimes your paint will spatter. And when it spatters all over your project, that can be very, very disappointing. So I will move my plate aside and squeeze my paint on off to the side. Just a little tip there. So I need my palette knife. I'm just going to mix this color up so that it's a nice rich dark brown, and I've just got a little bit of black in that real brown. And it'll just give me a very dark brown. A little bit darker than like a burnt umber would be. Okay, just wipe that off, set it aside. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you how it works with the wedge first, because these are smaller, and sometimes smaller things do work better with a brush. So we'll do the wedge first. So the main thing with stenciling is offloading. So first you're going to get your paint on there, and then you're going to offload. Normally I would do it on this paper plate, but I don't have room, so I'm just going to use this one. So you just take your sponge and you just offload. And that just means to get a lot of the paint off of the sponge so that it's not heavily coated. And then you're going to start pouncing, but you're going to do your first pounce very light. And the reason for that is that if you didn't offload, you will immediately know it, and you can stop and fix it, okay? But if you pounce heavy the first time, it's going to bleed under and you're going to have an issue. So I'm just going to move my thing over so that where it's hard there, because the board is underneath it, so I just scooted it over and just start pantsing. Okay, and I'm just going to fill in this little cow. Alright, and then if you want, you can always take a peek and see how it's looking. And the way you do that is you hold one side down and then you lift the other side. Okay, so hold one side in place. You're going to have to remove your tape a little bit and just lift it up, and you can peek under and you can see if it's covering well and if you're getting any bleed, and that looks perfect. So I'm not getting any bleed and it's covering just fine. So then stick your tape back on there and you can continue. Okay, now if I wanted, I could go ahead and try to get these letters, and the wedge sometimes will get in there just fine. But if you find that you're having an issue and you can't get the wedge to get in there, then switch over to your brush. A lot of times on the tiny ones, it is a little bit harder. Don't just try to push your wedge harder, because if you do, you're going to squeeze the paint underneath and that will be a problem. So just pounce over and over and over until it starts to fill, or switch to a brush or something else, or you can even use the corner a little bit of your wedge. All of these things will work. I mix and match all the time my technique. If something's not working, then I just try another technique. For the most part, I prefer wedges. I think they work lovely. It's just me. These wedges I'm using are Target Up and Up brand. They're the latex free premium wedges. I like them because they're very firm. They come in a package like this, but they're very firm and they last for a really long time. I've been washing and using these over and over for about 9 months now. So if you wash them while they're wet and don't let your paint dry on them, they will last and you can just keep using them. So I'm just going to move my block of wood over to this section, and I'm going to show you how the brush works. So pretty much the same, just load it up with paint, just the very tip there, okay? And then offload, the same as you did before. Just offload onto your plate, and you can use a swirling method until it's pretty well just got a little bit of paint on there, okay? And then you're just going to take that and you're very lightly going to start swirling. And the same as the other thing, and I try not to work up under my edge. I go away from it as much as I can. You can't always, and you can stipple if you need to, if you're having trouble getting into something, or you can swirl, okay? Both will work. And usually I'll just kind of use a little mixture of the two techniques. Smaller areas, you tend to do a little more of a stippling, just because it helps the bristles to get in there. Okay, and it's better to have a light coat and go back if you need to. Okay, especially with the brush. You don't want to push that paint under your edge. Just give it a good light coat, let that dry, and we might put one more coat. As you can see, this is a little bit lighter of a coverage than the wedge. So I'm just going to set this aside and go ahead with my wedge and finish up this one. I'm just going to offload that. And this is why I think I prefer the wedges. I feel like I get a better coverage overall with them, but I did want to show you both, just in case you prefer to use a brush, because some people do. Some people can't stand wedges, and I have to guess it's just a personal preference and whatever you happen to be used to. Just gonna go ahead, and sorry that's making noise. I think it's my can. My mic's right there, it'll be loud to you. Making sure I got all the little corners of these letters and all of this like wheat flour, whatever this is. It looks like wheat or something. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and put one more coat on that middle section since I did it with the brush. So I'm just going to load a little bit more paint on there and offload it. And do one more coat on this chicken just to make sure it's as dark as the other side. Peek and see how everything looks, and hopefully we don't have any bleed, and everything turned out great. And don't try to, if your paint has not dried and you try to go back over it with your acrylic paint, sometimes you will find that it's not getting darker, it's actually getting lighter. Now if that happens, you need to hit it with the blow dryer or let it dry, because what's happening is your paint is activating from being wet on top and it's pulling off the underlayer. So if you ever find that that's happening, just stop for a minute, let it dry it with the blow dryer, and then continue, and you won't have that problem. I'm getting that just a little bit on that chicken right there. So I think I'm just going to hit it with the wedge. Seem to be getting better coverage, probably because this is slick. When you're working on slick surfaces, I think wedges do work better also. So I'm going to just hit that with the wedge just a little bit. It'll also kind of even it out so it matches the other two sides. You do get a little more texture look with a brush than you do with a wedge as well. So keep that in mind. All right, that's good. That's all I'm doing with that particular stencil. So just check your hands, make sure you don't have paint on your hands when you go to move your stencil, because if you do, sometimes you'll mess it up and get paint somewhere. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in water so that I can wash it so that my paint does not dry on there. I'm just going to give that a little rinse and some water I have sitting here. And squeeze it out onto my microfiber cloth and set it aside. And then I'll properly clean it later, but for right now that will just keep it from drying on there. So let's pull this tape off, and hopefully we won't. I'm going to pull slow because I did have that paint that was wet underneath, and even though I did tack it up a little bit or detack it or whatever, it could pull the paint off, but so far so good. Looks like we're safe. But always go slow just in case. And if you do have a situation where it does seem like it's pulling the paint off, hit it with your blow dryer and warm up that glue. And a lot of times that will solve the problem and it will come right off. So I'm going to finish pulling this off so I can clean these real quick. I tend to try to clean my stencils immediately if I can. So see, we have nice good coverage here and we don't have any bleed. So see how that looks? It's very nice. Alright, so I'm just going to set that there. Now I'm going to clean my stencils with a wipe today just because that's what I have handy. Normally I actually will use a microfiber cloth that's wet a lot of times because it just saves money on wipes. And I just use a wet one. This one's not wet and I don't really want to stick it in that dirty water, so I'm just going to use a wipe today. But both methods will work just to save money. If you can just use a wet microfiber, that is a handy tip. And I just get these at Home Depot or Lowe's. They come in packs of like 25 or 50. What's your little... There's a little tiny piece on this guy, and that could easily break off, so you gotta watch when you're cleaning it. A lot of times on the smaller stencils you might have little pieces like that, so do be aware of them and just try not to be too hard on it when you're cleaning it. But cleaning them immediately will help it to clean much easier, and you won't have to scrub so much, which means that the chances of you damaging your stencil is a lot less as well. So just tap that and Same thing, there's these little M's right here. They've got tiny little pieces too, so a lot of tiny little pieces on this one you gotta kind of watch for. But you can see how easily these clean up. Essential stencils are honestly my favorite stencils. They have nice thick Mylar, and I think it's like 12 mil, and it's very sturdy. They hold up, they clean super easy, and I really like them. They have great designs. I am an affiliate for full disclosure, but I was actually using them before I became an affiliate, and I just became an affiliate because I can give my viewers a discount code, which is Art Room, and you can get 10% off your purchase by using my code. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us. I get a little commission and you guys save 10%, so that's very helpful. Alright, so we got that all clean. I'll come back to this, and by now this is nice and dry, so we can continue on. Because this is a thin coat, it dries super fast, so you don't have to worry too much. Now I'm going to put Farm Fresh at the top here, and I'm not going to do the trees, I'm just going to do the Farm Fresh part, and I'm just going to kind of eye it, see where I want it, and how far down. I think about there, and try to make sure it's straight. I can use the little trees as kind of a guide to see that it's centered and just this edge. So I'm just going to tape right there where my tree is, because it'll go right through. And just make sure that my board is where it needs to be, and it is. It's at the top there where I'm going to be stenciling. And I might go ahead and tape around the edge. Now if you're ever doing a stencil and it's coming off the edge like this, you can't tape it to your table. It makes the stencil pop up. So what you do in that circumstance is you have a block of wood, okay, that's the same size as what you're working on, and you can just lay that block of wood there and you can tape to that. Okay, so that's a way to get around that problem. In this case, I'm right there on the edge, and I don't really have to worry about it, but it's something I do like to bring up. Alright, so we're going to go ahead with our Farm Fresh here, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep the same color because I like it. And just offload. If you need more room, get another plate to offload onto. And we're going to go ahead and do this. My first pounces are very light, so I can make sure I offloaded enough. And then I'm just going to continue to go over all the letters until they're filled in. Very easy. And just don't get in a hurry. Don't try to just cover it all at once. Don't squish harder with your sponge because you're like, oh, it's not covering, I gotta push harder. No, just light touch and just go back and forth until it starts to fill in. You have to be a little bit patient, because that patience will pay off in the form of not having any bleed on your stencils. So it's worth it. Okay. Just making sure all the letters, all the little corners of the letters look good and they're well covered. Now it's a little bit thin. I could wait and do one more coat. If I do, I want to dry it first. So if I have room, no, I don't have room. So I'm just going to go ahead and dry that with the blow dryer so I don't have to wait. So right, that's good. A little bit more paint on there. Offload. And just give that one more coat. So it covers real well. All my little corners of my letters are covered. And that looks really good. Alright, so I'm going to set that there. Make sure my hands are clean. always a challenge for me to get tape off. All right. We can probably just pick that up. There we go. We have Farm Fresh. Go ahead and clean this off real quick. So let me just do that. So I'm just going to line up on the farm on the bottom here. And I'm just going to mark my edges with these little things come off. And make sure I'm straight. I can see through it, so I can see if I'm straight. And I think I'm going to keep it about that high because it comes up really close to the eggs there, so I think I'll just keep it there. And then I'm going to have to move my wood. I'm just taping through these little holes, and then I'm just going to move up so that my wood is where it needs to be. Now I'm going to have to do this in two sections because my wood's not quite long enough, but I can go ahead and hit this side first. Just make sure you offload. Watch that C, that's really close. I might go ahead and there's some tape there just to be sure I don't hit it. I think I can come over just to where that starts, and then we'll have to move the wood underneath. Okay, just keep doing it until you get full coverage. All of your little edges and your corners. And then I'm just going to push it off this way so that my wood comes down here. Continue over here. Just a little more paint on there. And anytime I reload my paint, I always do a very light pounce first, just to make sure I didn't get too much on there and it was offloaded properly. You can come back over this. Alright, that should be good. So my hands are clean, and just lift that up. Okay, now we have On the Farm. And that's pretty good. I like that. Go ahead and wipe this off real quick. I know I want to put that on here, so this little barn. I was just going to do the barn, but I think I like the windmill, so I'm just going to tape that. Put a little tape there. I need my corner, so just moving my wood. Make sure I got it on the corner here. Corners can be a little bit tricky. You got to make sure you get it in there. Sometimes it won't quite hit the corner, but it's because it's too hard to reach. But it's pretty close, so I think it'll be fine. Now, if you wanted, we could do this barn red just to be different and give it a little pop of color. So I'm just going to tape off my barn so I don't hit it. Just right there and there. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit the windmill and just hold it down because it's right on that corner. Corners, like I said, can be just a little bit trickier. I'm just going to use the edge of my sponge. Very light touch. I know you can't tell how hard I'm pressing, but this is a super light touch. Okay, do that. we're going to pull off this tape. I don't want it to move too much. So I'm going to use this tape and I'll just turn it. I'm not pushing it down because that's so wet and I don't want to pull the paint off. You could wait for it to dry if you want, but I'm just going to not push it down. And I'm going to get me some red. So let's see, I have some engine red and the Folk Art Multi-Surface as well. Engine red is a good barn color. So we'll just throw a little drop there. It won't take much. Hopefully it will cover okay. Engine red is a little bit transparent. If necessary, we'll just put 2 coats. I'm going to switch to another sponge. Just get a little bit of that. You might need a little more paint than that. I didn't squirt very much out. Now if you ever find that you're just not getting good coverage because your paint color that you're using is translucent, which some of these colors are, this engine red is a little bit translucent. You can do white first and that will help. I think I'll be okay if I just do a couple of coats though, so we're just going to try this. If worse comes to worse and it just doesn't seem to be covering, then I'll just do a little, I'll add a little white to the color just to make it cover better, and then we'll do a last coat. Sometimes that helps. So let's give that a little dry. So we can't add more until it's dry. Okay. Back over. Get my sponge. Try one more coat on there. That's not too bad. We might not have to add white. But sometimes you have to add white just because the white is very opaque and that will help you get the coverage that you need. That's not too bad, so I think I'll leave that. And there we go. We have a little red barn. Now we want to do it the other side. And I'm going to just do it the same, but I'm going to flip it, so I have to clean this first. Cleaning it because I'm going to turn it over. So we need to make sure that it's clean first. Alright, now I'm going to pull up my block of wood to this corner. So I'm just moving it around so I can feel it in the corner. Alright, and then I'm just going to flip it over. That way it'll be more balanced. Same thing, just going to line it up, look at where I had the bottom there, try to stay in about the same spot. Just take that there first. And I think I'll go ahead and do the red first this time. I'm not going to push this down too much just because that way I won't have to fight to get it off. Alright. Dropped my sponge. Alright, let's get back into our red. Offload. Now you'll be tempted to try to get that in one coat, but don't. Just offload it and let it take 2 coats. That way you don't have bleed. Side. Let's give it a dry real quick. Anytime you use your blow dryer, remember to use a cold blast if you have it. If you don't have a cold blast, just let it cool off for a minute, and that will help it not be tacky. Okay. Let's give this one more coat. That's good. And I'm going to set this one in water so that the paint doesn't dry up on there, and I'll use it again another day. Leave this where it is, and I'm just going to switch my tape. to this side, and I'm only pressing on the edge, not pressing. Got a little bitty piece right there. Let's move that aside. Okay, I'm not pressing on the red part. And get my other sponge and then offload. You know, I've got that F again. Don't want to hit it. Just hold it down on your edge because it does give just a little bit right there. Very light touch. Just letting it slowly fill in. And that's the trick to stenciling. Offloading and a light touch and patience. And you won't have bleed and be frustrated. Okay, that's good. Just pull that off. There we go. Alright, and that's pretty much it. Now we've got a little sign. It's farm fresh, milk, eggs, and bacon on the farm. So I think that's cute, and that's how you stencil on canvas. Hope you guys learned something today. If you got some value out of this video, then give me a like, subscribe to my channel. I do videos like this regularly. Right now I have my Facebook page where I do lives on Sundays and Thursdays. 2 days going. You can join me over on my Facebook page. My Sunday lives are at 4 p.m. Eastern on Elisa's Art Room, and my Thursday lives are at 7 p.m. Eastern. So anytime you want to check those out, please feel free. But until then, y'all have a wonderful day and happy stenciling. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye.